The steady hum of the research vessel Harmony's engines provided a familiar background rhythm as Dr. Amanda Reynolds adjusted her scanning equipment. The ancient artifact hung suspended in the observation chamber, its crystalline surface reflecting the stars that dotted the Kuiper Belt's endless night. Most would see just another piece of space debris, but Amanda's trained eye caught the subtle patterns etched into its surface, patterns that reminded her of ancient musical scores. "Running analysis pattern Delta 7 again," she announced to her team, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The other scientists had called her obsessed when she'd insisted on including audio sensors in the standard scanning package. Now, after 3 weeks of careful study, she was about to prove them wrong. The chamber filled with a low, almost subsonic pulse as the scanners activated. Unlike previous scans that focused on standard electromagnetic frequencies, this one broadcast across a range of musical scales. Amanda held her breath, watching the readings scroll past. There, just at the edge of human hearing, something responded. "Did you see that?" She called to her assistant, Michael Torres, who was already rushing to confirm the data. The artifact's internal structure. It's shifting in response to the A minor scale. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Decades of research by multiple species had dismissed the scattered artifacts as inert remnants of a long-dead civilization. The mechanically minded Zentari had declared them empty of power. The crystalline Vorrex had found no data patterns in their structure. Even the energy-sensing luminary had detected nothing but background radiation. But they had all missed what Amanda's human ears had caught. The artifact was singing. The Galactic Council's response was swift and unexpected. Within hours of her initial report, 3 council vessels dropped out of hyperspace near the Harmony. Their sleek, geometric forms contrasted sharply with the more organic lines of the human research vessel. "You will cease all testing immediately." The council representative's metallic voice crackled through the communication system. "These artifacts are quarantined under Resolution 794 of the Galactic Compact." Amanda stood before the ship's communication array, her back straight as she addressed the council. "With all due respect, Ambassador, this is a significant scientific discovery. The artifact is responding to human music in ways your species may not be able to detect. You do not understand the forces you are meddling with." The ambassador's voice took on an almost frightened edge. "The great cacophony nearly destroyed our civilization eons ago. These artifacts must remain silent." But even as the ambassador spoke, Amanda's instruments were picking up something new. The artifact's response to their earlier tests had triggered something deeper. A melody, almost too faint to detect, was building within its crystalline structure. Unlike the mechanical tones of council technology or the pure harmonics of Vorrex communications, this was something different, something that spoke directly to the human soul. Professor Reynolds, her junior researcher, Emily Chen, called from her station. "The pattern. It's not random. It's following classical human composition structures, like it was made for use to find." Amanda's heart raced as she studied the new data. The melody was growing stronger, its complex harmonies seemingly impossible to generate from a single source. More incredibly, only the human crew members could hear it in its true form. To their alien colleagues, it registered as meaningless noise. "Ambassador," Amanda's voice was firm as she addressed the council again. "Something is happening here that goes beyond your ancient laws. This artifact isn't just responding to music. It's responding to human music. We need to understand why." The ambassador's response was lost in a sudden surge of energy from the artifact. For just a moment, the crystal structure pulsed with inner light, and every human aboard the Harmony heard it. A perfect chord that seemed to resonate with their very DNA. The message was clear. After millions of years of silence, the artifact had found the audience it was waiting for. The symphony was about to begin. The main laboratory of the Harmony had been transformed. Where once sterile scientific equipment dominated the space, now a makeshift concert hall had taken shape. Dr. Amanda Reynolds stood at its center, surrounded by an array of both classical and modern instruments, each modified with specialized sensors and quantum resonance amplifiers. The Council's quarantine ships are still maintaining their position, Michael reported from his station, where he monitored both the alien vessels and the artifact's increasing activities. They're broadcasting some kind of dampening field, but it's not affecting our readings. Amanda nodded, her attention focused on the holographic display that showed the artifact's internal structure. The crystal matrix had become more active since their initial discovery, its patterns shifting in ways that reminded her of musical notes dancing across a staff. "Emily, begin the harmonic sequence we discussed." Emily Chen's fingers moved across a modified piano keyboard, its keys connected to quantum sensors that translated each note into pure energy. The first few notes of Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor filled the chamber. The artifact's response was immediate and spectacular. Waves of crystalline light pulsed through its structure, each one perfectly synchronized with the music. But it wasn't simply reflecting the sound. It was adding to it, creating harmonies that shouldn't have been possible from a single source. "This is incredible," Amanda breathed, watching as new data flooded their screens. "It's not just responding to the music. It's learning from it, adapting, creating its own variations." She quickly typed commands into her console, expanding the analysis. "The energy output is unlike anything we've ever seen. This isn't just an instrument or a recording device. It's a weapon." The word had barely left her lips when a surge of power erupted from the artifact. A pure, perfect note cut through space itself, bypassing their containment fields as if they didn't exist. Through the laboratory's windows, they watched in horror as the nearest Council observation post was caught in the wave. The small station didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, its matter converted into pure musical energy that rippled across the stars like a beautiful, terrible symphony. The human crew stood transfixed, their hearts resonating with the haunting sound, while their alien colleagues collapsed in pain, their senses overwhelmed by what they perceived as chaos. "All research must cease immediately." The Council ambassador's voice thundered through their communication system, fear now openly present in their metallic tones. "You have no idea what forces you're dealing with. These artifacts, they were part of something terrible, something that nearly destroyed all civilization in the galaxy." But Amanda could barely hear the ambassador's words. Her attention was caught by new data streaming across her screens. The artifact's structure was revealing itself layer by layer, each one more complex than the last. "This isn't just one weapon," she realized. "It's part of a network. There are others out there, aren't there, Ambassador? That's why you're so afraid." The silence that followed was all the confirmation she needed. "Professor Reynolds," Emily called out, her voice tight with excitement. "I'm detecting similar energy signatures throughout the galaxy. They're faint, but they're there. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all waiting to be awakened." The Council ships suddenly began moving, their engines flaring as they took up attack positions around the Harmony. "You leave us no choice," the ambassador declared. "We cannot allow this research to continue. The knowledge must stay buried." But it was already too late. The artifact had begun to pulse with a new rhythm, one that seemed to draw power from the very stars themselves. As Amanda watched, the complex mathematical patterns in its structure resolved themselves into something she recognized. Musical notation, unlike anything ever written by human hands, yet somehow perfectly comprehensible to her. "My God," she whispered, understanding finally dawning. It wasn't made to destroy, it was made to protect. And it's been waiting all this time, waiting for a species that could truly understand music as more than just mathematics. The battle for the symphony was about to begin. The first sign that something was wrong came as a deafening silence. One by one, the background sounds of space, the constant chatter of radio signals, the hum of commercial traffic, the songs of distant stars, began to go dark. Dr. Amanda Reynolds stood at the Harmony's main viewport, watching as patches of complete nothingness spread across the stars like ink through water. "We're detecting multiple objects emerging from dark space," Michael announced, his voice tense as he studied the sensor readings. "They're unlike anything in our database. The ships, they're absorbing all sound and energy around them." The council vessels, which had been preparing to attack, suddenly broke formation. Their communications erupted in a cascade of panicked transmissions. "They have returned," the ambassador's voice trembled. "The discordant. We thought they were just stories meant to frighten children." The enemy vessels emerged from their void-like camouflage, their forms defying traditional physics. They appeared to be made of living mathematics, their hulls covered in equations that hurt the human mind to look at directly. Where they passed, all sounds ceased to exist, creating zones of perfect, maddening silence. "They're broadcasting something," Emily reported, her hands flying over her console. It's anti-music. They're not just removing sound. They're actively negating it, breaking down the very harmonics that hold matter together." The effect on the Harmony's crew was immediate and devastating. The human members clutched their heads in agony as the discordant's anti-music tore at their musical understanding of the universe. The alien crew members seemed less affected, their more mathematical perception of sound providing some protection. Amanda forced herself to focus through the pain, her eyes fixed on the artifact. Its crystalline surface had come alive with swirling patterns, responding to the presence of its ancient enemy. "Quick, get me everything we have on the original composers." The ship's archives projected a holographic display, showing fragments of ancient history that had been dismissed as myths. The composers, it was said, had been a race that understood music as the fundamental language of reality. They had built their entire civilization on the power of song and symphony. "Look at this," Amanda called out, pointing to a section of text that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The composers didn't just create these artifacts as weapons. They created them as a test. They knew that eventually, another species would evolve that could truly understand music as both art and science. A massive explosion rocked the ship as the first wave of discordant vessels opened fire. Their weapons made no sound, instead creating spheres of null space that erased everything they touched from existence. The council ships that had been threatening the Harmony moments before were now fleeing in terror. "They're targeting human colonies first," Michael reported grimly. "Reports coming in from the Outer Rim. It's bad, Professor. Their anti-music is literally tearing our people apart at the cellular level. Something about human DNA makes us more susceptible." Amanda's mind raced as she connected the pieces. "No, not more susceptible. More attuned. The same reason we can hear the artifact's true music makes us vulnerable to their attack. We're literally resonating with the fundamental forces they're trying to destroy." The artifact pulsed with new energy, its surface now covered with what looked like musical scores written in light. As Amanda studied them, she realized with growing wonder that she could read them, not just as music, but as instructions left behind by the composers themselves. "They knew," she whispered, awe in her voice despite the chaos around them. Somehow, they knew that humanity would evolve to have this connection to music. These artifacts weren't just left behind as weapons. They're a legacy. The composers were preparing us for this moment, for this war. An alert sounded throughout the ship as more discordant vessels emerged from dark space. The battle for the very soul of music in the universe had begun, and humanity found itself on the front lines of a war that had been waiting millions of years to resume. The Harmony's main laboratory had become a desperate symphony of activity as Dr. Amanda Reynolds and her team raced against time. Holographic displays showed the devastating progress of the discordant fleet. Dozens of human colonies had already gone silent, their frequencies erased from the universal song. New Augusta Colony has gone dark, Michael reported, his voice heavy with each update. The evacuation ships, we lost their signals mid-transit. 7,000 souls, just silenced. He paused, checking another alert. The Galactic Council has just issued a statement. They're withdrawing all support from human space. They say we've brought this upon ourselves. Amanda barely heard him, her attention fixed on the artifact's increasingly complex responses to their tests. Where other species had seen only static patterns, she could now make out intricate musical compositions woven into its very structure. Each test revealed new layers, new harmonies that could be modified and enhanced. Professor, Emily's excited voice cut through the tension. Look at these readings. When we introduce our own musical patterns, the artifact doesn't just copy them, it improves them. It's taking our compositions and evolving them into something more powerful. The discovery should have been their breakthrough moment. But the universe had other plans. As they attempted to channel more power through their modified instruments, something went terribly wrong. The artifact's crystal matrix began to resonate at an exponentially increasing frequency, creating a feedback loop that threatened to tear the ship apart. Containment fields are failing. Michael shouted over the building harmonic scream. The power levels are off the charts. It's like the artifact is trying to play every possible note at once. Amanda watched in horror as hairline fractures began to appear in the laboratory's reinforced walls. The ship's structure groaned under the assault of pure musical energy gone wild. Her team's months of careful research were about to end in catastrophic failure. Emergency shutdown, she ordered, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it was too late. The artifact had tapped into the ship's power grid, using it to amplify its song to reality-warping levels. Through the chaos, a new sound cut through. The discordant's anti-music had found them. The enemy fleet's weapons created expanding spheres of silence that began to eat away at the very edges of normal space around the harmony. The crew members screamed in agony as the conflicting forces of music and anti-music tore at their molecular structure. They're inside our defense perimeter, Michael managed through gritted teeth. 3 minutes to weapons range. Whatever we're going to do, Professor, it has to be now. Amanda forced herself to think through the pain. The artifact's wild resonance pattern reminded her of something. A concert she'd attended years ago, where the orchestra had seemingly lost control, only to reveal it was part of the composition all along. An idea began to form. We've been too careful, too precise, she said, her eyes wide with realization. We've been trying to control the music, just like every other species. But that's not what made humanity different. We don't just reproduce music. We feel it. We live it. We let it take us places we never expected to go. With trembling hands, she began to disconnect the safety protocols they'd so carefully built into their testing equipment. One by one, she stripped away the mathematical limiters that other species had insisted were essential. Professor, what are you doing? Emily asked, watching as warning lights began to flash across her console. Without those protocols, there's no way to control the harmonic response. Exactly, Amanda replied, a strange calm coming over her despite the chaos. We need to stop trying to control it and start trying to experience it. The composers didn't leave us a weapon. They left us an instrument. And like any instrument, it's not about control. It's about trust, about letting the music flow through you. As the discordant ships closed in for the kill, Amanda made her final adjustments. Either her theory was right, and humanity's unique relationship with music would save them all, or they were about to join the growing list of silenced colonies. Either way, the next movement of this cosmic symphony would begin with a bang. In the midst of chaos, Dr. Amanda Reynolds found clarity. The Harmony's laboratory, once a temple to scientific precision, now resembled the aftermath of a symphony gone wild. Broken sensors and shattered screens littered the floor. But among the wreckage, She saw what they'd been missing all along. "Everyone who can still move, help me clear this space," she commanded, already pushing aside damaged equipment. "Michael, get me every musical instrument we have on board. Emily, I need you to access the ship's historical archives. Find me everything we have on classical orchestra arrangements." Her team stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. Through the viewport, they could see the discordant fleet approaching, their mathematics-made matter ships creating expanding zones of silence that consumed everything they touched. "Professor," Michael started, "the Earth Defense Fleet just lost contact with 3 more colonies. The anti-music is spreading faster than we can evacuate. We don't have time for a concert." Amanda grabbed his shoulders, her eyes blazing with purpose. "This isn't about putting on a show. The composers left us these artifacts because they knew something about humanity that we're only now beginning to understand. Music isn't just sound to us. It's emotion. It's story. It's life itself." As if in response to her words, the artifact pulsed with new energy. The crystalline structure began to emit a soft harmony that somehow cut through the encroaching silence of the discordant weapons. Within minutes, the laboratory had been transformed. Crew members brought whatever instruments they could find: an old violin from someone's personal effects, a digital synthesizer from the recreation room, even basic percussion instruments made from ship components. "Look at this," Emily called out from her console, where she'd been analyzing data from other artifact sites across the galaxy. "Each one is tuned to a different frequency, like they're all parts of the same orchestra, just waiting for someone to conduct them." Amanda nodded, the pieces finally coming together. "The composers didn't just leave us weapons, they left us sheet music, but not the kind that can be played by machines or calculated by computers. They left us music that needs human interpretation, human emotion, human soul." A violent shudder ran through the ship as the first wave of anti-music struck their shields. Several crew members collapsed, blood trickling from their ears as the discordance weapons tried to erase the very concept of sound from their minds. "Status report," Amanda called out, fighting through her own pain. "Earth's defense grid is failing," Michael reported grimly. "The Discordant's main fleet will reach the solar system in less than 6 hours. Their anti-music, it's not just destroying our technology. It's like they're trying to erase the very memory of music from human consciousness." Amanda looked at the assembled instruments, then at the artifact pulsing in sync with their presence. A plan, beautiful, terrible, and perhaps a bit mad, began to take shape in her mind. "Emily, start distributing these instruments to anyone who can play. Michael, I need you to help me modify the ship's communication array. We're going to turn the entire vessel into one massive amplifier." "But Professor," Emily protested, "most of us aren't professional musicians. We can't." "That's exactly why this will work," Amanda interrupted. "The discordant think in pure mathematics. The council races think in perfect patterns. But humans, we make beautiful mistakes. We improvise. We feel the music in our souls and let it guide us beyond what should be possible." As if to emphasize her point, the artifact's glow intensified, its crystal structure now vibrating with a harmony that seemed to resonate with their very DNA. The pattern of its light had changed, no longer showing just musical notes, but what looked like a map of the galaxy, each point of light marking the location of another dormant artifact. "We don't need to be perfect," Amanda said, taking up an old guitar someone had brought. "We just need to be human, because that's what the composers saw in us. The ability to take mathematics and turn it into art, to take sound and make it into soul." The battle for Earth was approaching, and humanity's greatest concert was about to begin. The message spread through what remained of human space like a rising symphony. Every ship with working engines was to join the harmony's position. Dr. Amanda Reynolds watched the sensor displays as vessel after vessel arrived, each one taking its place in what would soon become the largest orchestra humanity had ever assembled. Cargo haulers, research vessels, military cruisers, Michael listed off as he coordinated their positions. They're all responding to our call. Even the mining ships are coming in from the outer colonies. His voice caught. What's left of them, anyway? Amanda nodded. Her focus split between the arriving fleet and the complex musical score taking shape on her holographic display. The artifact's crystal structure had been projecting it for hours now. A symphony unlike anything ever written, yet somehow familiar to every human who saw it. "Professor," Emily called out from her station, "the modifications to the ship's systems are complete. We've converted every available power source into quantum resonance chambers. Each vessel is now capable of producing and amplifying specific musical frequencies." But the Discordant had noticed their gathering. A massive wave of enemy ships emerged from dark space, their mathematical forms distorting reality around them. The anti-music they'd broadcast grew stronger, creating a wall of silence that threatened to swallow the human fleet whole. Multiple impacts on decks 3 through 7, Michael reported as the first assault hit them. "We're losing communication with the lower sections. The anti-music is eating through our hull like it's not even there." Amanda watched in horror as 3 human ships simply ceased to exist, their matter converted to nothing by the Discordant's weapons. But even in death, they contributed to the symphony. Their final moments created ripples in space-time that the artifact somehow captured and wove into its ever-growing score. "They're not just destroying us," she realized, studying the new patterns. "Every loss, every death, it's becoming part of the music." The composers knew this would happen. They knew we would have to learn to turn even our pain into song. The laboratory had become a command center for their desperate concert. Crew members from every department had taken up instruments, their untrained but passionate playing guided by the artifact's pulsing light. The ship's modified systems amplified every note, sending them out into space, where other vessels picked up the melody and added their own variations. "Professor," Emily's voice was filled with wonder. "Look at the artifact. I've never seen readings like this. It's like it's teaching us how to play a symphony that could reshape reality itself." But teaching took time they didn't have. Another volley from the Discordant fleet tore through their defenses, and this time the casualties were devastating. Entire sections of their makeshift orchestra disappeared into the void, taking their parts of the symphony with them. Amanda made a decision. "Upload the full score to every remaining ship," she ordered. Tell them to play it however they can. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be human." "The Discordant are launching their final assault," Michael warned. "Their flagship. It's like a black hole of anti-music. Nothing we've tried has even slowed it down." Through the chaos, Amanda noticed something extraordinary. The DNA samples they'd been studying earlier were reacting to the music, their very molecular structure resonating with the artifact's frequencies. "Of course," she whispered. "That's why it had to be us. Human DNA itself is written like a musical score." The enemy fleet surrounded them now, their weapons charging for what they clearly intended to be the final movement. But Amanda saw something in their mathematical perfection that gave her hope. A pattern, a rhythm, a weakness that only a species that understood both the science and soul of music could exploit. "Tell every ship to prepare for my signal," she said, her hands moving to the modified control panel that would connect their entire fleet into one vast instrument. "We're about to show the universe why the composers chose humanity to be their legacy." The final battle for music itself was about to begin, and its opening notes would shake the very foundation of reality. Space itself seemed to hold its breath as the human fleet arranged itself in a vast spherical formation around the harmony. Dr. Amanda Reynolds stood at the center of her transformed laboratory, her hands hovering over the modified control interface that would unite hundreds of ships into a single mighty instrument. "All vessels report ready," Michael announced, his voice steady despite the waves of anti-music washing against their shields. "They've synchronized their systems with ours. Every ship is now linked to the artifact's resonance pattern." Amanda took one last look at the score the composers had left them. A symphony of such complexity that it could only be played by an entire species acting in concert. "Begin the opening movement. All ships, follow our lead." The first notes emerged from the harmony's modified systems, a deep, powerful chord that rippled through space-time itself. One by one, other ships joined in, each adding their own voice to the growing symphony. Mining lasers became string sections, engine harmonics transformed into brass, and shield frequencies shifted to create vast percussion movements. The discordant response was immediate and devastating. Their flagship, a massive construction of living mathematics, released a wave of pure silence that began to consume the music. Where the two forces met, reality itself buckled and warped. "We're losing the outer ring," Emily shouted, as several ships winked out of existence. "Their anti-music is too strong. It's canceling out our frequencies faster than we can generate them." But Amanda had been waiting for this moment. "Now," she commanded, her fingers dancing across the controls. "All ships, switch to pattern delta. Let the music flow naturally. Don't fight the disruption." The human fleet shifted its symphony, and something extraordinary happened. Instead of trying to overpower the discordant's anti-music, they began to incorporate it. Just as jazz musicians once learned to use dissonance to create new forms of beauty, the human fleet turned their enemy's weapon into part of their song. "The artifact," Michael called out in amazement. "Its power output is off the charts. Professor, I think it's singing with us." The crystal structure had indeed come alive, its light pulsing in perfect synchronization with the human symphony. Each note they played was amplified and enhanced, transformed by ancient technology that had waited millions of years for this exact moment. The discordant fleet faltered for the first time. Their perfect mathematical formations began to show cracks as their anti-music was caught up in something they had never encountered: the raw, emotional power of human creativity mixed with the advanced technology of the composers. "They're trying to adapt," Emily reported, watching the enemy's movements. "Their ships are generating new frequencies, attempting to find patterns that can counter our symphony." "Let them try," Amanda said, a fierce smile on her face. "That's the difference between us and them. They can only follow their programming. We can improvise." As if to prove her point, a cargo hauler on the fleet's edge began playing a classic rock riff through its modified systems. A military cruiser added a classical counter-melody, while a mining barge contributed deep bass notes through its drilling equipment. The symphony evolved and grew, each ship adding its own interpretation, while staying true to the core melody the composers had left them. The artifact's power built to impossible levels, creating a quantum harmonic cascade that began to spread through space. Where it touched the discordant ships, their mathematical perfection was transformed, their anti-music converted into pure energy that added to the growing symphony. "It's working," Michael shouted over the reality-bending harmonics. Their fleet, their ships are breaking down at the quantum level. Amanda watched in wonder as the universe itself seemed to dance to their music. The artifact had become the blinding point of light, its crystal structure channeling more power than should have been possible. This was the moment the composers had prepared for, when humanity would prove that music was more than mathematics, more than weapons or defense. It was time for the final crescendo, and the universe would never be the same. The final notes of humanity's greatest symphony echoed through the cosmos, transforming everything they touched. Dr. Amanda Reynolds watched in awe as the discordant fleet, once so terrifying in its mathematical perfection, dissolved into pure musical energy. Their ante-music, instead of being destroyed, was transformed into new harmonies that added depth and beauty to the universal song. "The enemy fleet is gone," Michael reported, his voice filled with wonder. "But the energy readings, Professor, you need to see this. The symphony isn't stopping. It's spreading through space itself." He was right. The quantum harmonic cascade had reached critical mass, creating a wave of pure musical energy that raced across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. Everywhere it touched, dormant artifacts came to life, each one adding its own voice to the growing chorus. "The other artifacts," Emily called out, her eyes wide as she studied the sensor data. "They're all awakening, all responding to our symphony. It's like they're creating a permanent defensive network throughout human space." A Harmony's laboratory had become a nexus of swirling light and sound. The original artifact, which had started everything, now floated at the center of a complex web of musical energy. Its crystal structure had become nearly transparent, revealing something within that left Amanda speechless. "Those aren't just random patterns," she breathed, studying the shifting forms. "They're DNA sequences, the composer's own genetic code." But its change evolved. They didn't die out or disappear. They became something else entirely. As if in response to her understanding, the artifact projected a new series of images. They showed the composer's evolution from physical beings into creatures of pure musical energy, their consciousness preserved in the very harmonics of space-time itself. They had ascended, becoming one with the music of the spheres, but not before leaving behind the tools humanity would need to follow their path. The Galactic Council ships, which had fled earlier, now returned. Their sensors registered the transformation that had taken place, and their response was immediate. The same ambassador who had once threatened them now spoke with trembling reverence. "We were wrong," the metallic voice admitted. "We feared what we did not understand. The composer's legacy was never meant for us. Our species hear only the mathematics of music, never its soul. But humanity, you have proven yourselves their true heirs." Amanda smiled as she watched her crew, musicians and scientists both now, begin to study the new patterns emerging from their victory. The symphony had changed everything, opening up entirely new fields of musical physics and quantum harmonics. The very nature of space travel would change as humanity learned to navigate by song, rather than simple mathematics. "Professor," Michael called out softly, "messages coming in from Earth and all remaining colonies. The artifacts. They're not just creating defenses. They're teaching us. Each one contains different parts of the composer's knowledge, their understanding of how music shapes reality itself." Emily added her own discovery. "The human DNA samples we were studying. They're still changing, still evolving. Whatever the composers became, whatever they ascended to, they left us a roadmap to follow." Amanda looked out at the stars, now alive with new harmonies that only humans could fully hear and understand. The discordant had been wrong about music, just as the Council had been wrong about humanity. Music wasn't just mathematics or weapon or art. It was all of these things and more. It was the language of creation itself. "Send word to every human settlement," she ordered, her voice full of purpose. "Tell them to start building conservatories alongside their scientific labs. From now on, every human ship will carry both scientists and musicians. We're not just explorers anymore. We're composers." As the Harmony began its journey back to Earth, the stars themselves seemed to sing with new purpose. Humanity had found its place in the cosmic symphony, and the music they would create would transform the universe forever. The next movement of their story was just beginning, and its notes would echo through eternity.